Welcome everyone to the October Coaches Corner for First Lego League Challenge. I'm happy to see everyone joining in and helping us out with this. We appreciate it. It sounds like it's been helping out the teams as well. Again, my name is Louis Rubo. I am the Team Development Education Specialist with First Nevada. If you have any questions as we go on tonight, just please feel free to throw them in the chat. And then, of course, at the end of the session here, we'll have an opportunity to unmute ourselves and ask questions at that point too. So Jenny, if you wouldn't mind, I see popped on here, if you don't mind monitoring the chat with Riley to help answer some questions as they come along. So as always, just a quick reminder, we do put all of our presentations, not only the Coaches Corners, but our workshops as well, into this public resource folder. It is now a static folder, so it's the same folder not only from this season, but future seasons moving forward. If you go into and follow that QR code there, there's a number of subset folders in there, where one of them is labeled Coaches Corner, where you'll find today's presentation along with the one from September, as we do our November and January ones as well. That will show up in there. You also find in there, as I'll talk about in a moment, all of our presentation slides from our workshops are in there as well. This is a great resource for you to go to. So I just want to remind everyone, for the evening, you don't necessarily have to take notes because these presentation slides are already available to you. And the version I put into the public resource folder includes all of my presenter notes, which has the hyperlinks as well. So if you don't catch a QR code, you can always look into our slides and you'll get the actual real hyperlink in there as well. Okay, so what we're going to talk about tonight. Well, we're about halfway through the season. Kickoff was in August, technically, although I know a lot of schools don't start until late August, early September. So basically, we are about the halfway point for Nevada-based teams. You started forming your team in September. We've had some workshops, right? We're sitting here middle October, and then we'll have our qualifiers in December, of course, with some time off for the Thanksgiving holiday. So with that in mind, what I want to do is start off with just going through a handful of reminders from First Nevada. Then we want to talk about what milestones your team should be kind of reaching for or have accomplished at this point in the season. And then the last bit I want to talk about is how do you actually form your team roster and what that actually means even. And so we'll go through the mechanics of actually forming up your team roster now that you probably have a good feel for what kids are practicing regularly and which ones are going to represent your team at the qualifiers. And again, just a reminder, if you have any questions about anything I say, please feel free to throw them in the chat. If they're quick and easy, one of our First Nevada peeps will answer it there. And if it's something I need to slow down and go back over, we'll do exactly that. Okay, so let's start off with just our reminders. So it's just a sequence of announcements here for you as a coach to remember as we're about halfway through the season. So I've already talked about that repository, that Google Drive, that public resource folder. That's where we throw all of our documents. Our first place, our major resource we kind of want to point you to when it comes to our events is our calendar. So our calendar is dynamic in that what we do is we constantly update it with information as it becomes more available. The other thing is we'll talk about here in a moment, registration links are found on the calendar. So when we talk about signing up for a scrimmage or a qualifier, the first place you go is to this calendar, and you'll click on the event and you'll follow the link inside the calendar. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of this. To get to it, you can use the QR code there, or if you just type in firstnevada.org and go under the events tab, you'll find it there as well. We do suggest you kind of check in on this regularly, especially if you have an event coming up. Because this is a reminder of not only what will be covered in the event, but also if any updated information that you might need. And now at this point, we have offered all of our workshops in one form or another. I know this weekend in Elko, we will do our next level programming workshop, but the main point of this slide is to remind everyone the slides are available to you. And so each of those QR codes will take you to our different presentations. The Robot in a Day workshop and the next level programming workshop were done in person. And so there you'll find it's just the presentation slides. The Innovation Project Coaches Clinic was that 1 hour long session we did in the evening. that was a virtual meeting. And so not only are the presentation slides available to you, but as well as a recording of the event. And we were seeing over half of our teams have viewed that video. So wow, that's great. So just a reminder, all of this resources are available to you. If you find any errors, corrections, suggestions, or whatever, please let me know. I'm happy to hear your feedback on ways we can improve on this. Because, for example, we didn't offer the Innovation Project Coaches Clinic in prior seasons. Your feedback led us to it and said, this is something we need to do. So please let me know your feelings if you feel that we need to kind of expand on stuff further, or if you have any questions about the material that's presented in there, just let me know. Now, of course, some of this material is very much appropriate to hand off to your students as well, especially the stuff in the robot and day and next level programming. So feel free to download this information and share it with your team members as well. Okay, upcoming events. So this weekend, we do have a double header, if you will, in Elko. In the morning will be the next level programming workshop, and in the afternoon is our scrimmage. And so that will be kind of the last of our workshops for this season, and it will be also the start of our scrimmages this year. So if you're up in the Elko area, just recognize that. Now, the other thing that's kind of confusing in that particular instance is we do have 2 registration forms for it. There is a registration form just for the next level programming workshop in Elko, and a separate registration form for the scrimmage in Elko. And the reason we did 2 different signups is it's not guaranteed that a team is going to participate in both of them. And so just to keep our counts appropriate, just note that there are 2 registration forms. Don't assume signing up for one automatically has you signed up for the other. And just go to the calendar of events. And again, you can click on the 2 events and sign up there. Coming up immediately after that and before our next Coaches Corner is, of course, the scrimmages in Las Vegas and Reno as well. In both locations this year, we are doing a double dip of a morning scrimmage and a separate afternoon scrimmage. So what you'll see on our calendar is actually the scrimmage is listed twice with the hours different. So we do have a morning scrimmage, and then we have a lunch break for our volunteers and an afternoon scrimmage. And we really do ask, especially in the southern area, that you only attend one of those 2 scrimmages, because we actually have very large enrollment so far, which is great. And I believe today, Jenny just increased the enrollment because some of you may have seen that it was capped already. And so we have released a couple more spots for both the morning and the afternoon. I believe 8 more spots are now available for the 2. Again, the registration, the way you do this is go to that firstnevada.org website, click on our events tab, and find the scrimmage that your team is interested in participating in. Click on that, and you'll find an individualized link so that we can sign you up. And that's all done through the Eventbrite system. Jenny, did you want to mention anything about structure or on there? No, okay, she's mute at the moment. So, oh, my drink is backwards. Hold on. So,
sorry. I suppose for the scrimmages, I just want to let all of you guys know that I know Rubo said it. I just want to reiterate: you don't need to be competition ready in order to go to the scrimmage. Like, bring what you have. It's a learning experience for all. If your robot is not even running any programs, that's fine. You're going to talk to teams. You're going to see what strategies other teams are employing, and I'm sure you're going to walk away knowing a lot more than you knew beforehand. So it'll be a good experience. So please don't be intimidated by the competition nature of the scrimmage. It's really just so that everybody can get their feet wet before the qualifiers.
Very good. So the reason we do the scrimmage, of course, is it helps us set you up and get ready for the big event, the qualifiers in December. As a reminder, we talked about this in the last Coaches Corner. What we need you to do is before the scrimmage on November 4th, we ask you go onto our event calendar and identify the qualifier that your team would like to participate in. And so we have 3 weekends of qualifiers. They are on December 2nd, 9th, and 16th at various locations throughout the state. So please make sure that your team has signed up for your preferred qualifier before November 4th. That way we know that you're getting into the event that is appropriate for your team, because of either geography or because of just availability going into the holiday season. So just please, if you will, by November 4th, make sure your team has registered for one of these events. One important caveat to keep in mind is that only teams that have paid their their season fee to First Nevada are eligible to do this. So if your team has not made that payment yet, you may get removed from your event. So do, as I'll talk about in the next slide, make sure your team has also paid your season fee to First Nevada, because that's how we fund our events here. The other thing I should mention in passing is you only sign up for the qualifier events in December. The teams that progress onto the state championships in the spring, they automatically get registered up there. So you do not need to think about what happens after the qualifier for the moment. We just need you to sign up for your preferred qualifier events. So on that season fee comment here, again, I remind you of something we discussed before. There are two firsts involved. There is First Headquarters, and again, they're the ones that came up with the game. They come up with the rules for what judging is like, what the robot game matches are like. For them, you pay a $250 registration fee, and we use the phrase registration fee. This gets you into the program, if you will. And so First uses those funds to help develop future games. They help subsidize some of the costs as well. Separately is the nonprofit that we are part of, that's First Nevada. Our job is to deliver the games to you. And so we collect a separate, what we call a season fee, and that helps pay for venue costs, custodial costs. That allows us to buy our kits that we have at our competition and to support our events as well. So you have to pay two fees. It looks like it's going to the same first, when in fact it's actually two different firsts involved. There is the First Headquarters, that's where you register your team with, and then there's First Nevada, which is the local nonprofit responsible for running the events. So do recognize you have to pay two separate fees to get through the season. You should have already received an invoice letting you know if you have a amount $150 due. For our teams that are sponsored by Tesla or Nevada Department of Education, you should have gotten a receipt that shows that you have a zero balance. But if you are not supported by one of those two funding agencies, or if you're a community team or whatnot, you should have received an invoice for $150. And it's really important that you pay this as soon as possible, because again, you're not allowed to hold on to a spot at a qualifying event unless you've already made this payment. So you may get dropped from your qualifier if you have not made this payment going into the event. So just let me know if you have any questions on this. It's been about, I forget, 3-ish weeks, I think, since we sent these out. So do make sure you're checking your inboxes for these, and do pay them as soon as possible, please. A shout out to our volunteer coordinators. They're going to love this slide. As a reminder, all our events are ran by volunteers. And so when you see the referees at the robot game table and you see the judges walking the halls in between sessions, keep in mind that those are all volunteers. They are not paid people to do this. And we really could use some help recruiting volunteers. And some of the best volunteers out there are you, the coaches. So events that your team is not participating in is a great opportunity for you to get a kind of behind the scenes look at how the judging process works. So we do have 3 weekends of events this year, and we definitely would invite you and encourage you to help volunteer and judge or a referee an event your team is not participating in. I hear this over and over from our veteran coaches who have volunteered. It's a very eye-opening experience, and it gives you so many ideas moving forward, because what you get to do is, say from the judging perspective, is you get to see a whole panel of teams throughout the day, and you get all kinds of ideas of how they are presenting their judging, and then you bring it back to your own team. So again, if you're interested, we very much would love it. Way you do this is you go into your personal First dashboard and go under the volunteer tab, and you can sign up for the events that interest you. And you don't have to stay just with First Lego League. Shout out to our First Tech Challenge or First Robotics competitions as well. If you're thinking about maybe moving up to FTC in the future, come out and help at one of our other events and see that from the judging perspective. But again, we really could use your help recruiting. If it's not you, maybe a colleague at your school, a family friend or whatever, let them know that we are a volunteer-based program and we really could use that help helping get our events going. Now, just a seemingly random reminder, you will be receiving, well, you have already received a monthly questionnaire. It's a very short survey. We ask that you just remember to fill this out, even for our veteran coaches who are very comfortable with how their team is coming along. We still like to hear from you. We would like to know how you're doing in terms of the season. We do take these very seriously. A lot of the things I throw into the Coaches Corner are in response to items we hear back from you. It also has an opportunity for you to have a dialogue with our team support coordinators. So if you have a quick one-off question, it's a great way, just throw it in there. They'll respond and hopefully answer your question for you. And this helps you get it through the season. It also lets us know when we have to do course corrections throughout the year to make sure you're supported as best we can from the coaching perspective. So when you do see one of these questionnaires pop up in your inbox, please take the 5 minutes just to fill it out. It does help us tremendously, and it also makes sure that your questions and your voice are being heard. The last announcement, I just want to remind everyone that we have a survey going out to our student members. So what this is we are ending, well, we just finished up with our Tesla Education Investment Grant, and we are finishing up with our Nevada Department of Education grant. What we're trying to do is use these surveys to kind of give us a pulse, an indication of how effective these grants were. Now, the student one, we're asking from your coaching perspective is, if you will, have your students complete the survey at the beginning of the season. You'll see another one at the end of the season. So we're trying to do a pre and post with our students, and we really could use your feedback on this. So if you will, please have your students fill it out. Now, we are past our deadline. We did get an extension to October 22nd. But so sometime this week, when you meet with your teams, during your practice time, just have them fill out this survey. And in fact, for our younger kids in the first Lego League program, it'll take less than 15 minutes, if that. So we really need this information. It helps us move forward looking for future support with our donors. It also gives us an indication of the initiatives we did and how effective they are. And we also want to see, just in general, the impact that FIRST has on our students. So again, if you will, sometime this week, please have your team members complete the survey. Should be less than 15 minutes, and we really do value that feedback. So if you will, just give some time to do that. That is the last of my announcements. Any questions? The chat seems very quiet at the moment. Robin, great question. Hold that for a moment. The answer is going to be no, but I have a whole slide dedicated to it. Yes. So the question in the chat is, do we need to do a First Nevada consent and release? The answer is no, but I have a slide dedicated exactly to that when we talk about filling out your team roster. Other questions? Yeah, and so Elizabeth, I appreciate the question. Most of my students aren't registered on my roster yet. Yeah, and at the moment, there is no correlation between what your official roster is and the people filling out your survey. And so what we do is we understand, as part of the setup for this particular survey, although it is a pre and post structure, we don't make matching to see specific students from beginning to end. That's a whole nother level of difficulty. So what we really just want to do is get a pulse of the students who are with you right now, and then we'll do it at the end. It does not matter if they're on your official FIRST roster at this point or not. So any students that are working with your team, we just ask you to have them fill out the survey. Good. Excellent questions. Well, as I said at the intro, we are about at the halfway point. And so this is a good moment here, this Coaches Corner, to step back and say, okay, what have we accomplished? What should we have accomplished? And where are we going? And so this next section of tonight's Coaches Corner is just kind of reminding you of some of the major milestones your team should have reached or are currently working on to get ready for those December qualifiers. So at this point, your team should have a robot. And of course, I don't expect it to be the final robot. It's definitely a work in progress. And it's a work in progress all the way up until the day of the event, and even afterwards sometimes. One of the key things I do really want to share with you is if you came to the Robot in the Day workshop, the robot that we built that day is not the required robot. Your team actually has the freedom to choose whatever style or structure they want to do. We used a particular structure, a particular robot for the Robot in a Day because the instructions were there. It's a very robust robot. It's very easy to adapt to any season, but you're not required to use that one. And that's the one shown there on the far left. Your team is going to be, your team is allowed to explore any type of robot design it would like. It could come up with an original design, or it might find something on the internet and want to recreate it. So I have here 2 QR codes. The one on the left is to the advanced driving base and the basic driving base that we did during the Robot in a Day. The QR code on the right takes you to Prime Lessons, a website that has all kinds of helpful information on programming and building every robot. Those are 2 just suggestions. You are very much welcome to come up with something original, or to find something else on the internet, or just to stick with the advanced driving base. Just let you know that you do not have to have that particular robot that we did during Robot in a Day. So at this point in the season, you should have received and already built all of your Lego missions for the Masterpiece season. The instructions for building them are followed on the QR code. Basically, if you go to firstlegoleague.org, that's a wonderful website you should keep in mind. The build instructions are there. If you're following the team meeting guide and you're following along on those sessions, you build the mission models throughout the first 4 sessions. So they should be now complete. A good suggestion, if you are behind, is any year you really should have the kids building the missions initially, but coaches, you really should do a quality control. Make sure the missions are built correctly, because what you see here is exactly what you're going to see at the competition. So make sure your missions are built to spec. That way your team is practicing and solving the mission as you expect them to look like when you come to the qualifiers in December. But the point here, again, is just a reminder, you should have all of your mission models built. The other reason you want to have your mission models built is because they are not just random missions. They tell a story, and that story helps your team develop their innovation project as well. So it's not just building Legos. It's, let's think about what this mission represents, and then see how that might inspire your team to get through this innovation project. As always, I'm going to stand on my soapbox and remind everyone, please read the Robot Game Rulebook. Coaches, again, and we've said this before, you should read through it at least once, if not twice. Be familiar with what's in it, and then hand it over to the students and tell them to become the experts on it. They need to know these rules inside and out. In November, when we have our Coaches Corner, then we'll talk about preparing for the qualifier event. And at that time, we'll talk about a little bit about how the robot game match happens. Students are very much encouraged to have a dialogue with the referee. If they think there might be some questionable calls and how they were scored, then what they'll do is they'll quote the robot game rulebook and have that dialogue with their referees. They can't do that unless they understand the rulebook. The other thing about the rulebook is you will find, and we'll talk about in a moment, you don't have to do all the missions. So the rulebook is going to tell you what the value of each mission is, what it takes to score it. So your team really should be reading this upside down, inside and out, over and over. Of course, as the season has gone on, these smart teams out there, your teams are so brilliant at finding loopholes. And first doesn't know what teams are going to come up with or what questions they're going to have as they're developing these seasons. Just a little side note, it takes about 2 full years to develop a particular challenge. So they don't know all the things that you guys are going to come up with. And in response to that, first has to release some challenge updates. It is your responsibility as a team to go and read these updates. They are official rules, so you are expected to understand them. Thankfully, I mean, this year we're only at about 2 pages of updates. They're pretty straightforward, but they are official rules that our referees and our judges are going to reference. So please make sure that your team has looked these over and make sure you understand what they're saying in clarification. A question I get every single year is, do we have to do all the missions and do we have to do them in order? And thankfully, the answer is no. Only the World Championship teams do all of the missions, and they never do it in the order described in the rule book. Your team, as part of being your team and defining its own personality, is deciding which missions it wants to solve in what order. So there are 15 missions on the game board this year. You do not have to do all of them. You do not need to do half of them. You can do as many as your team feels it can accomplish successfully. And you do not need to do them in any order. Your team, as part of their strategy that we hear about in the robot design judging, is figuring out which missions you do and in what order you decided as a team to do. Just as a little piece of advice, for a rookie team, honestly, if you're doing 2 or 3 missions and you're doing it reliably, you're having a very successful rookie year. Our state champion team usually has somewhere around 7-8 missions that they can do. So about half the board, give or take, is what they're doing. So that kind of gives you some measurement of what to expect going into the qualifiers. Again, rookie-ish team, think about 2 or 3 missions you just know you can nail. And then if you're a more veteran team, you're aiming for about that 7-8 mission mark in the 2.5 minute run. But I just want to make sure everyone's at ease. You do not have to do all the missions. You do not have to do them in any particular order. It's completely up to your team and the strategy that they come up with and which missions they want to do and in what order to do them in. So as a heads up, remember the Robot in a Day workshop as well as the Next Level Programming workshop, we worked on one of the missions. So if you were to go to the slides there, we walked through some of the missions, realized in hindsight that the example code I gave actually solved the mission for you. So you may want to just use that code to start off with. But also as well, there is a guided mission for all teams. If you go into the Spike app and you go under the units for competition ready, you will find in the 4th tutorial is actually a guided mission. And so it is the cooperation mission. Definitely check it out. You may have to modify your robot a little bit or modify the code to make sure it works for your particular design, but they do walk you through a solution to that mission. So between the Robot in a Day and this competition ready unit, your team should have at least 2 missions that you feel somewhat comfortable with getting through. So for those who joined us for the Innovation Project Coaches Clinic, we walked through the fact that the Innovation Project is a quarter of what your team is being measured on. Not only that, is we also discussed that the Innovation Project is not something you do in the last week of the season. It is something that you should be working on throughout the season. Right? You do need to start thinking about some brainstorming in the early parts. Your team for this year needs to figure out a specific hobby or interest that they're all collectively going to rally behind. They need to start doing some research on it, coming up with a solution to how to better share that hobby or interest with others. And then they need to start designing and creating that solution and going through and sharing that and iteratively improving it. Since we're about halfway through the season, your team should be somewhere in the middle here. Your team should have already identified what hobby or interest that they're going to look into solving. They're going to start researching ways to actually make that more accessible or to be able to share it through either the art, STEM, different activities. And your team right now should be designing that solution. It might be, again, a service. It might be a physical item. It might be an app or whatever. But at this point in the season, being halfway through, you really should be thinking about narrowing in and working on that final solution. In the coming weeks, you will be connecting with different audiences, potential users, experts in the field, getting their feedback, making some iterative updates, and of course, also preparing to present your work at the qualifier. So overall, I just want to remind you, this is an all season long idea, the Innovation Project. Don't think of it as an extra burden, as we talked about in the Innovation Project Coaches Clinic. What the purpose of this is really an unconstrained opportunity for your team to practice the engineering design process. It's for them to spark an extra interest in the STEAM. And so take that as an opportunity for them to learn something about the world and to follow that passion through and come up with a really innovative solution to a real world problem. So as a quick side note, on behalf of Red Rock Elementary, I just want to remind everyone they're going to open their doors to an innovation project sharing night, where they're going to invite a handful of teams to come in. And what they're going to do is allow everyone to kind of start sharing with each other, getting some feedback. So this is an awesome opportunity for you to go in and hear from other teams. In fact, use it as part of your judging session to remind this was a major part of your sharing and getting that iterative feedback to allow you to go back and make improvements to your project. So if you're interested in participating in this, there is a registration form there. Definitely sign up. There is limited space, so it is going to be on a first come, first serve basis. But this is an awesome thing the coaches at Red Rock did last year. They came up on this on their own, had a wonderful experience, said, let's do it again this year. And so please, if you're interested, sign up for that. I see a few comments coming through on here that we'll get that registration link working. But I definitely would highly suggest this. Oh, you know what? I didn't put the date on there. It's November 16th from 6 to 8. So November 16th from 6 to 8. I forgot to put that on the slide itself, but it is inside the notes. Also, since we are about halfway through the season, if your team is interested in making a team jersey or shirt, not a requirement. You don't have to do it for anything, but it tends to kind of help your team unify itself, find its voice, become a more community-driven team. So if you are interested in having a team shirt, now's a good time to have it designed and set off to the printers because it does take usually a few weeks, keeping in mind that we do have the holiday season coming up with the Thanksgiving break and whatnot. I know it sounds like it's so far away, but every time you look down at your calendar, you realize, oh man, it's actually really close. So I just want to remind teams, if you are going to have a shirt made, just kind of think about maybe getting that done. Shirts are awesome, and not only at the event, it really helps us locate your team because the shirts make us find and stick out your team. It also helps you in judging because a lot of times judges will remember, say, a tie-dye look or, oh, that was a team in all bright red or whatever. It helps in judging. Also, it's an opportunity for you to recognize your sponsors. So if you are sponsored by Tesla this year, you might want to put them on your shirt. As a heads up, if you are receiving equipment and sponsorship from the Nevada Department of Education, they do not allow us to use logos, but you can recognize them in words. So you can say Nevada Department of Education. You just can't use their logo. If you need the Tesla logo, let Leilani know. She's already shared it out to teams, but just in case you might have lost it in your inbox, she can reshare that with you as well. Nice. So I'm going to pause here, take a drink of tea, and let me know what questions you have. So I know Elizabeth, that's a good, let me come back to where we were. So Elizabeth asked, does every team member have to do an innovation project or is it a group? Great. Jenny said, no, you do one project as a team. Also, just a reminder, when you present your innovation project at the qualifier, every team member should be involved in the presentation to some extent. The judges are absolutely welcome and allowed to ask any team member about any aspect of First Lego League. So you want to make sure everyone has some knowledge and has been involved with it to some extent. Let's see and then it looks like, correcting me wrong, Jenny, you are fixing the sign-up form, so it should be good now that everyone has access to it. Yeah. Nice. Good. Any other questions you want to throw in the chat about kind of mid-season milestones? All right. If not, I want to talk about when you put the calendar for next year. Actually, anytime that we have someone interested in hosting, let us know. If we're looking for venues, so the question is, when do we put our calendar together for next year? We try to secure our venues in the spring. And so we have some idea of what our calendar looks like. It gets posted over the summer. And then in the fall, we try to finalize any paperwork. So yeah, the answer in short is usually in the spring is when we really focus on next year's calendar. At the moment, our focus is heavily on getting ready for, doing our workshops right now and getting prepared for our qualifiers. Then we take a sigh of relief over the holiday break, and then we come back and do our championships. And then after championships, we start our planning for the following season. Yeah, so that's a good point. The innovation project meeting. So do keep in mind that First Nevada services the entire state, and we try the best we can to make sure we avoid individual school district times. And I also know that it happened to be the first night of the NHL when the Golden Knights raised their banner. So we had some vacancies due to that as well. So we tried to avoid that. And we also, the other thing is we also support all three FIRST programs, First Check Challenge and First Robotics Competition. So for example, we have a Coaches Corner tonight for First Lego League. Tomorrow we have one for First Robotics Competition. And next Tuesday we have one for First Tech Challenge. So between our workshop schedule, our Coaches Corner schedules, and all three programs, we end up having to make some compromises, and we understand sometimes it can't be the best solution, but we do listen, and we try to avoid as many pitfalls as we can. And I apologize, but that's why we try to record things like the Coaches Corner, that innovation project thing. And it's also why our team support coordinators and myself are available for other meetings if need be. So I apologize. Yeah, I know it's not sometimes the ideal schedule, but we are trying to balance a lot of variables along the way. It's a very fair question. Yeah, we sit there and we bang our heads on the table looking at all the school calendars thinking, why does Elko start school so late? And why does CCSD start so early? And we think of all these things, yeah. All right, so let's talk about making your team roster. So this is an important part as we're going to talk about moving forward, is that when you get to an event, you have to turn in an official roster from your first dashboard. And to some minor bit, it can be a headache getting this done. And so that's why I want to mention it now so that you can start working with your parents to make sure all of your students get onto your roster. The other thing is, now that we're about halfway through the season, you probably have a good feel about who's been with your team most of the way and who is probably going to be with your team all the way until the end. And so I think it's a good point in the season to start thinking about what exactly is your roster going to look like. So as a kind of sidestep to that, the other thing I want to remind you of is to make sure you have a team name you like. So what we do is we prepare for our events is we go into the first dashboard system, if you will. We download all of our team information, and we use that team information to put together our schedule and also to put together things like our scoreboard. And so what we do is we look at what your team number is, and we look at your team name. So if you want to change your team name, we would highly encourage it. It's a fun way to have some personal identity for your team. It will get displayed on the scoreboard. It will be displayed in our schedule of events. So you definitely want to do it. If you want to stick with your team name from the prior year, that's fine. If you want to have something related to this year's theme, that's great as well. Your team has that kind of autonomy in deciding what they want to call themselves, but it's a great way for you, again, to be something individualized. When Leilani does a lot of our team registration, she usually puts a team name in there that's just something like your school name. And that's fine. But again, really, I would encourage you to come up with something original, something that's fun, something that goes on your team shirt, something you'd be happy to put up on the scoreboard. To change your team name, you sign into the first dashboard. On the far left column, there's a team option section. If you click on the team information drop-down button, there's a team profile option, and under that team profile, you can go in there and change your team name. So in this case, I call it Yabba Dabba Doo. Okay, back to the kids. So now that you've got your team registered, you gave them a team name, what we need to do is get your team put together in terms of its roster. As a reminder, is a First Lego League Challenge team is made up of 2 to 10 kids. So you have to have that minimum of 2, and you have to have a maximum of 10. Their ages need to be between 9 and 14. So a couple of important rules about this. You're welcome to practice with more than 10 kids during the season, but recognize on the day of the competition, you have to have no more than 10 students on your team. So that roster you're going to turn into us cannot have more than 10 on it. The number of kids that go into the judging room cannot be more than 10. The number of kids you send up to the robot game table cannot be more than 10. Not only can it not be more than 10, it has to be the same kids throughout the entire competition. So you can't send a certain group off the judging and a certain group up to the robot game. Your entire team needs to be present for all its activities, and the entire team cannot have more than 10 members on it. Very important rule, it can get you disqualified. So if you go into judging session and we see 12 kids, your team may not get any awards at all just because they got disqualified for having a too large of a team. On the other side of the question is, what about ages? The upper age limit is a hard limit. We don't want our older students coming in. They should be doing our other first programs. The lower age limit is a softer limit. So we really leave it up to you as a coach to decide on the maturity of your students. If you have an 8-year-old who is showing the maturity and can contribute to your team, then by all means, allow them to be on your team. We understand that, especially our veteran teams, that you have this cycle of bringing in younger students, having them go through multiple years, graduating them on to the other first programs. So having younger age kids is fine. That's your choice. As a recommendation, I wouldn't have more than maybe 1 or 2 on your team below that age limit, because you do want to have a certain level of maturity to get through not only the season, but at the events itself. So that's just kind of a big picture of just reminder of some of the rules and the things that we're looking for as you come to the competition. Now, we are going to ask that you do turn in an official roster that represents who is the coaches on your team and who are your team members. The purpose of this roster is for us to see at a glance that our adult coaches have gone through the first youth protection program. So we'll see that you have been YPP screened. We also see a list of youth members on there. And what we want to see on those is that all the youth members have a consent and release form completed from first. And so these are 2 of the key elements that we look for when you turn in your roster. You print the roster off of your first dashboard. Pretty straightforward process for printing it. But before we print it, we got to talk about how to make it. So just as an overview, there are 2 guides available to you. One of them is just a general youth registration system overview. I have a screenshot there. It kind of gives you an idea of what exactly is the registration process. It also has links to actual guides to walk you through step by step. If your parents have any questions, there is a parent guide as well. Definitely share that with them to understand what exactly they're agreeing to, what exactly is a consent and release form all about. Some of our coaches and our parents would like to have some more information. And so we try to be as transparent as possible. And this is a great website here to start looking at first. So the mechanics of it. I'm going to start the old way. And as you'll see in a moment, the old way is the old way, and there's a new way that's better. That is almost a philosophical statement there. That's something to sleep on. All right, so the old way. I got Riley laughing. The old way is this. Basically, what you would do is you would log into your team dashboard, and you would go under the team contacts section. And what you would need to do is put in your contact information for each of your families. So you would have to have an email for each of them. And then you would send them off an invite to have their kid join a team. And so then what the parent has to do is on their own time and on the computer, they would have to fill out a registration form with First if they're not already signed up with First. And then they would have to fill out information about their kid. and say they want to join your team. Then the coaches would go back in and accept that application. So it's kind of a back and forth process. It works. It's still available to you. However, this year there's a brand new system called Express Enrollment. And I really do recommend this. I've heard a lot of positive feedback so far about it. And the way it works is actually like a 4-step process, and it can be basically done on site, which is one of the great benefits here. So what you do is step 1 is you will log into your first dashboard. So it's the same step as before, the old-fashioned way. And what you would do is under the 3rd column there is you would go under the team contact section, and you'll click on the contacts. You're going to click on contact options, and that'll lead you to the team contact section. Very similar to before, but here's the nice thing is what you're going to do is click on the button in the middle that says QR code link, and you'll be taken to step 3. And in step 3, all you do is type in the names of your team members, and that's it. And then what you're going to do is see a roster kind of listed under your Express Enrollment page, step 3, of all your kids' names. And next to the kids' names is going to be a button that says QR code. And when you click on that, you get this 4th window here that I've shown, where what you have now is a QR code unique to that child. And what you can do is either email that to the parents if you have their email, or if they come to one of your practices and pick the kids up, they can literally scan that QR code with their phone, and they can register them on your team. And what I've heard is it can take less than 2 minutes to get done. So it's a very rapid way, thus the name Express Enrollment, of getting your kids on your roster. So again, the steps are you go into your dashboard, step 1, go under your team contact section, step 2, click on the QR code link. That gets you to step 3. Just type in the individual student names. And then next to each student name, you're going to click QR link, and you'll get a QR code. And it also gives you a hyperlink if you happen to email them in. And then the parents just fill out that, follow the instructions on that hyperlink. So it really makes it easy to get them on your team. It is much faster. What I would suggest you do is maybe at one of your practices, invite the parents to hang out. And then just one by one, have them scan their QR codes, and on their phone, completely finish the registration process. Or if you like, you can let them use the team laptop and have them fill it out, the enrollment process there. So it is a much faster way to build a roster. Once the roster is built, you go back into your team contacts page, and there's a big button there that says print roster. And it's pretty straightforward. And that's what we need to see from you on the day of the event. As was asked.
But we got a question from Amanda, and I'm not sure how to answer it. There's one student that moved up from an explore team to a challenge team. Does the parent need to re-register?
Yeah, so FIRST allows our students to be involved in multiple programs simultaneously. So they'll need to be now added to that team. Because an explore team will have a different team number than a challenge team. So you need to make sure they show up on the roster for the challenge team. Even though the parent might have their kid in the FIRST system, what we need to see that student is linked to that particular challenge team. So they will need to redo that registration for the challenge team. They're welcome to be on multiple programs at the same time. They're just not allowed to be on multiple teams. So a student cannot be on multiple challenge teams at the same time, but they can be and doing explore and challenge at the same time. And likewise, for older kids, they can be on a challenge team and a FIRST Tech challenge team at the same time. They can be on a FIRST Lego League challenge team and a FIRST Tech challenge team at the same time. They just cannot be on 2 teams within the same program. And then the last thing, I already mentioned it, if you're a veteran coach and you were with us in last few seasons, we used to have a consent and release form for FIRST Nevada. Because we are a separate nonprofit from FIRST headquarters, teams for the past few seasons had to do 2 consent releases. That's no longer the case. The one you do now at headquarters is now encompasses the First Nevada activity. So when your parents registers their kid with your team, they automatically do the first consent and release as part of that process. So it's all taken care of there. Again, that's one of the reasons we want to see a roster, is then when we see your roster, we see a little check mark next to the student's name showing that we have a consent and release on file for them. Okie dokie. Whew, I need another drink. It's time for you to ask questions. Actually, I don't have anything else to present tonight. So at this point, throw questions in the chat. Feel free to unmute, raise your hand, however you want to go about this. I'm here to answer your questions. Anything so far? Let's see. There was a long one from Scott.
It was about the character limit. Looks like 80 characters is the maximum.
I would ask. I don't know what the first system does, but I don't.
It's a lot.
I just went and tried to create a new team and just to see what it was, and it cut me off at 80.
And I think Scott's point is important here. Sometimes we have to truncate it to get it to fit on the scoreboard and into our documents and for our game announcers. Yep. Good. Do we do not need a roster for the scrimmage. Is that correct, Jenny? We do not need them for the workshop. Okay. Yeah, we need them for the official events. And I do want to say as well, for the team that do advance, we need you to resubmit them at the championship. We will send a reminder for that. There is about a month and a half, 2 months almost between events. And sometimes kids do drop off. So we do need an updated roster before the championship for those teams to move on. So, and Jenny said yes. Perfect. Any other questions? Please feel free to raise your hand or throw them in the chat or unmute yourself.
Yes. Qualifiers are all day event.
Yep. So, Amanda, the rough schedule is we usually have team check-in around 7:30 in the morning. We do a coaches meeting around 8. That really kind of gets things rolling. And then depending on the size of the tournament, we're usually done between 3 and 5. And I give a big window there because some of our smaller events we get done earlier and our larger events we get done later. But yeah, do count on being an all-day event. There we go. Yeah, and that one was one that came from our Las Vegas events last year. Mm-hmm.
Most of the host teams, we're still waiting to hear back from them, but most of the teams that are hosting these competitions for us are planning to sell concessions there too. So if your kids bring some money, then they can buy some snacks. And depending on the venue, maybe even a full lunch. As soon as I get details back from the event hosts, I'll send that information about each individual event to all of you.
Yes, and Amanda, the kids and the coaches need to all come together because what we do is the coaches will have a meeting at 8 a.m. We usually ask one of the coaches, and then the team is getting their pit set up, and then they will jump in. And then, as you see with the schedule there, judging and practice rounds start at 8:30, and so they just need some time to settle in, get their pit set up, and so kids need to be there early as well. And now I will say, these are great questions. Much of our November Coaches Corner, which actually happens after Thanksgiving, if I remember the schedule correctly, we'll dive into depth what exactly the qualifier event looks like and helps you walk through that day of events. And that'll give you, I think it's, I'll have to look at my calendar real quick. I think we have about a week and a half between the Coaches Corner and the first qualifier. Let's see. We have our next Coaches Corners on November 28th. Oh, so it's the week of that qualifier. Yeah. Fortunately, Thanksgiving really messes up our schedule. Yeah, we would normally, I guess, I would have had our Coaches Corner on the 21st, but that's Thanksgiving week on a Tuesday night. I didn't expect a lot of turnout. Yeah. Nice. More questions? How's everyone feeling? Good. Go ahead, Rob. Oh, yeah, Rob, you can unmute yourself. Oh, feeling good. Well, we're almost at the hour. So if you don't have any other questions, we can call it a night. And we'll see most everybody coming up very quickly. Elko, of course, we have our double events this weekend, followed by our scrimmages in both Reno and Las Vegas right after that. Well, I guess 2 weeks, excuse me, November 4th. Don't let me confuse you. Yeah. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.